I just heard when when he said what he said about me having worked with this for a long time, and I see the title of what I'm going to talk about. If someone would have told me 20 years ago that I would give a lecture on shame, I would probably say, no, that's silly. You know, I probably would have said, no, shame, I don't even feel shame, so why would I talk about it? It's not a topic of mine, it's not so interesting. And I had a teacher in nonviolent communication, for those of you who've been here before, Marshall Rosenberg, who founded this. And he kept on saying, never do anything to avoid shame or guilt. And I said, well, that's easy because I don't have it. And then there were a number of things that happened in my life, mostly regarding my own anger, where I realized, yes, I did feel shame, but I was so fast at avoiding it to any price, to not having to feel that uncomfortable, yucky, not so nice feeling. So that I hardly ever paused and noticed what was going on. But I went into anger or blaming myself or doing other stuff. So then it was all kind of clear to me at one stage that shame is not a friend, it's a foe, it's some part of our life that we it's not something that is useful. It's diminishing us, it's making us small, it's making us scared, it's making us, we don't go for the dreams and hopes and joys in life. And maybe you recognize this, that you see that shame is something that can stop actually any feeling. And shame is this interesting thing that when we are joyful, when we are kind of out there, when we're taking risks, that's when shame comes in. It's like it comes in and it kind of stops all other emotions. Even if we then, when it stops, we might say, no, I don't feel shame, I'm okay. We kind of pretend it's not there. So I started wondering, how come? Why would we avoid shame? Why is it so uncomfortable? Why is it not just like any feeling? Well, maybe other feelings are also uncomfortable, but not maybe to that degree. So it took me to kind of studying a lot of different things where shame was involved, but most of all looking at for how human beings used to live for maybe 2 million years. We used to live in very small groups where everything that happened to this group was dependent on if the people in the group took care of the group or not. So anytime someone would take a risk, like forgetting fire or not protecting our safety and so on, if you would do that enough times, you would be a threat to the group and at the risk of being thrown out. So you can all imagine, before there were any 7-Elevens or any Hiltons or any supermarkets of any kind, what that meant. When we were thrown out of a group, it meant death. It meant that we could not survive on our own. So the more I look into shame, how it comes up nowadays, the more I see that it's not so much the shame that is uncomfortable, but it's the fear that is so linked to that shame feeling that we do anything to avoid it. We do anything to not feel it. So then as I studied that, I was kind of curious, so how come shame is there? Like, I know why hunger is there in us. It's very easy to get, that it's kind of the signal you need to eat. Why thirst is there, you need to drink. Maybe why loneliness is there, because you need people, you need company. So why is shame there? What purpose does shame serve? So the more I looked into that, I noticed that there were 3 things that shame can remind me of. One is the need for acceptance. Second is the need for belonging. And third is the need for dignity. So before I say more about that, if you at any point have questions, please ask those questions right away. Maybe in the end I will have space for questions. But anytime it's not clear what I'm saying, please raise your hand and just tell me. So I live in the north of Sweden, very close to the Arctic Circle. And I love skiing, cross-country skiing. So in the winter, almost every day, I go out in the forest and I put on my skis and I go out and I'm totally alone. So even if at least I pretend to be a good skier, I sometimes fall. And I fall, and skis and ski poles and legs and arms is everywhere. And what do you think is the first thought that goes through my head? I see that some of you know it. Did anyone see me? So before I even check, did I break a leg? Did I break my ski pole? I check, did anyone see me? And I find that super fascinating. Before, I used to pretend, well, I don't care if anyone see me. I would maybe even fall in front of people just to show how free I am, how shameless I am. But nowadays, I take it as a reminder that I'm a human being and I need acceptance, belonging, and dignity. And then I can stand up again and I can, do what I want to do. But to me, it's like a measure of how much shame is connected to me being a social being. It's a feeling that comes up for me because I'm perceiving that another person, other people are there. So then I do lots of trainings and lots of workshops on shame, like how that affects communication and how we can deal with it when it comes up, when we want to connect to people. Not so long ago, I was in Budapest. And I was going to a training almost as lost as today. I was just 10 minutes ago, I was just running around in these corridors, not finding this room. And I had a bit the same. I was in Budapest, and I was looking for the house where I was going to enter. And I finally found it, and I tried to call the person that was going to let me in. And as I was standing there waiting for this person to come, the door was open. And there was an older lady with a bag. And the moment I saw her, I kind of said, or thought I'm going to go in and try to help her, like open the door, so that she can easily come out with her bag. And she started like yelling at me in Hungarian. And I don't know much Hungarian, but I know she knew she was, this international language. I knew that she was frustrated by me. So I felt shame immediately, like a sense of, there's something here that, this social interaction is not working well. And as I learned that shame is my friend, it's not something to get rid of, but I slowly learned that it's a friend. It's going to remind me of something important. I paused, and I the next moment when she paused also, I said in English, I'm just going in here. I'm going to do a workshop here. Because I thought she was angry at me, stepping in to a door where I did not belong, a door where I wasn't supposed to enter. And then she said in a very clear and perfect English, well, of course you can enter, but you let me go out first. So again, I had another shame attack, another wave of shame. And as I learned, it's my friend. I kind of checked with, is it acceptance, is it dignity, or is it belonging? And it was really clearly dignity, like a sense of being a dignified human being. And the moment I connected to that in myself, I realized it was the same for her. It was very easy for me to have empathy, not from my head, like, I wonder what she's feeling, what she's needing, but it immediately, I had a sense of that we were same. I have a need for dignity, and she had a need for dignity. So then, as I was connecting to that, it was easy for me to hear that she was giving me this good advice of, you wait and you come in after I have stepped in. So there are many moments in my life where I can see, if I see shame as something valuable, it will be a reminder of me to care for my connections, to care for my connection with any human being. So I live up in the north. I have a son that is soon 15, and a few years ago we were at this cafe, and he was he was getting something to drink and something to eat, and he was carrying his tray. And as we walked into the cafe to find it somewhere to sit, he fell over. He kind of stumbled on something, and he fell over. And when he did so, he immediately turned to me and said, "You should have warned me." So if I wouldn't have known that shame is not only my friend, but also everyone's friend, and realizing that anger, lashing out at someone, very often is a sign of that someone is experiencing humiliation of some kind, I would probably have, but don't blame me. And we would not have had a very nice coffee break because we would have probably started fighting. But instead I realized it was humiliating for him. He fell in front of people watching him, like he fell, showing he was not, adult enough to carry his own tray. He was like 10 at the time. So instead, I simply helped him up, knowing he has a need for dignity. And I also had that, when he was in front of all these people, he was like blaming me. I also felt shame over that. But as I learned that I don't need to act immediately on that shame, we could talk about that later. And it was one of our best time at the coffee table, and not as it could have been if I would have punished him for him having shame in that moment. So I do have a PowerPoint, but I don't know now what is next. Yes. So shame is this, like I said, it's a feeling that comes in and kind of breaks in between all other feelings. And it seems to be a feeling that is the same everywhere. So I want you to kind of remember a moment when you felt shame. Maybe as a kid. Maybe yesterday. Can you all recall a memory of when you did something and someone saw it?
I remember when I was a little child, I was in the vacations, and it was contagious, and we went for dinner in some restaurant, and there was a swimming pool with water. And I finished my ice cream, and I didn't know what to do with the stick which left. And I put it to this pipe, which is connected with this
swimming pool.
With this pool. And the second day, I saw that there is empty. So I was very ashamed.
So the story is about when she was a child and hiding the stick of the ice cream at the pool, and then next day realizing it was gone. It was, and I want you to, if you have a moment like this, I just want you to place your hands place your hand on your body in the place where you feel shame. Where do you experience shame? Just put your hands in that place. So keep it there, and then have a look around where people have their hands. So Can you take next one?
Yes, I just felt shame.
Yes. Very often, this is where we feel shame. In our faces, in our necks, like we become smaller, and in our chest, we become small, not being a threat to the group, not being a threat to the belonging. We kind of shrink, and very often we feel it in our eyes. We feel it as we don't want someone to see us. At the same time, we want to be seen because we want to belong. So when you know that you have shame, when you feel shame, actually, then you can just ask yourself, is this because I have a need for belonging or for dignity or for acceptance? And then everything is fine. Because then you usually would know, if you connect it to that, usually you would know what to do next. But the problem is usually when we already have bypassed this emotional, this physical part of shame. So I want to show you something that for me has been of the biggest helps in my life when I want to be doing things that I love to do and I see that I'm avoiding them in some way. And I call it the compass of needs. So, yes. So when I feel shame, for example, let's say I like singing. Maybe some of you like singing. And maybe some of you like singing in the shower. Maybe some of you like singing in front of people. And maybe every now and then you try. So you try singing in front of other people. And you kind of, probably feel a bit nervous, a bit, visible. And then you sing this most beautiful song you practiced maybe for weeks. And it's a sensitive song. And then when you sing it, there are some people in the audience that laugh. Right? You know the feeling? So you go out there, you kind of nakedly show yourself, and somebody's laughing. So then we might do one of four things, or usually we do. One thought that might go through your head, well, who to blame for my emotion? So one would be, well, of course it's the audience's fault. They just don't know what good singing is. This was the most beautiful Swedish song you ever heard, and of course you don't have good taste enough. So then I can just blame you without taking responsibility for my emotions. Or I can say, of course, it's my fault. I'm not a good singer. I should never have done this. It's my fault that I feel this way. And on the other axis of this compass, I will try to solve this discomfort, this uncomfortable feeling of shame, through finding out who to blame. No, not who to blame. Who has the power to change it? Sorry. So first one is who to blame. Second kind of question would be, who has the power to change it? So either I have all the power or you have all the power to change it. So let's say I sing and you laugh. And I decide this is too uncomfortable. I will never ever sing again, not even in the shower, because I had this discomfort. So I will withdraw. I will forget all about singing. Even if I really long for singing, the shame will be so strongly and so much discomfort that it will get me to stop doing it. Or I might invade my shame, invade the vulnerability, and say, well, I'm going to sing whatever anyone thinks, and maybe I need to take a glass of wine before, or a beer or something, some vodka or so, to do it. But I will do it no matter how I'm received. But I will do it from a place of, loneliness. It's like I'm not sharing the moment with someone as if I could sing it and have connection with other people. So, I'm not sure. Yes. So So those are the 4 ways that we usually avoid shame. So either by withdrawing, never doing what caused shame again, making myself cold and hard to kind of not feel anything actually. Or I blame someone else, or I blame myself. Blaming myself, next time I want to sing, I might go, yeah, you know, I really not a singer. I'm really bad at singing. Don't expect too much. I didn't practice enough. You know, don't be too disappointed. And then you sing. So then you don't need to bother about if someone else is shaming you, if someone else is laughing at you, because you already made yourself loose. You already made yourself like a boxer who's been paid to go down in the 3rd round. You already lowered the expectations so much that you don't have to live up to anything, which is also a really boring way to live. If we always take ourselves down, it's probably not going to be a fun thing to sing anyway. So what do I suggest then? Well, if I want to sing, for example, I want to do it and with connection. So I would probably come and I would probably say, you know, and I'm not going to sing to you today, so don't be worried. But I would probably say, I feel a bit nervous. I want to sing. I'd love to sing, and I really want to be received in what I'm going to do. And then I sing, and I sing with that connection with myself, rather than sing and then try to run away as fast as possible. So I'd like you to, with this compass, I'd like you to turn to someone close to you and just ask the person that is there closest to you, what do you do when you feel shame? Just for a moment, 1 or 2 minutes, just connect with what do you do mostly when you feel shame, and what does the other person do? I'm just curious to hear if there are any questions so far, or if there are any comments on what you shared. And then I'm also curious, as I don't hear any answer to that, I'm curious if there is anyone who, when I asked you this, have a sense that, but I don't do any of this. I don't avoid shame in any way. Nobody. So, can I hear a few examples then? What do you do when you attack others? How can that look? To avoid shame when you blame others, what would you say, for example? Or do, if anyone is daring enough to say that?
Maybe telling bad things to other people about that person.
So maybe not even telling this person, but telling other people bad things about this person. So it might not be in front of this. It might be me singing in front of you, Polish people, and then I come back to Sweden and say, oh, they have such bad taste in Poland. They were laughing at my really serious singing. I will attack you, so I don't have to feel the discomfort of the shame. What else do you do if you want to attack others? Yes.
Sometimes just saying it's because of you not enough, so then we create a history about it. Like sometimes you connect the person with the situation you did in some ridiculous way.
Yes.
Create a story about it.
I'm glad that you say the ridiculous way. He was saying that you kind of make up a story, and it becomes, very often afterwards, it becomes really ridiculous. Like for me, my default, because we usually have one direction as our default place where we go directly, and mine is actually attacking others. So for example, I'm really lousy at knowing where I have my keys. So if I need my keys and I don't find them, I make up this ridiculous, like you're saying, that my partner, it's because he didn't put them there because da-da-da. And I would immediately blame him if I feel shame of not finding them. And he might not even have been in the house for the last 2 weeks. But I was still in my head fast as, with the speed of light, I would come up with a story why I'm not to blame. And what I know now is that usually then I just need to take a deep breath and come back to take responsibility. This is also what media does. Media usually, when there is something that is shameful, there's usually someone's fault, and then after a few days, usually it's the other side's fault. Have you seen that? Very often it's like a ping pong game. So what do you do when you blame yourself? What do you say or do then? Yes.
I'm not good enough.
I'm not good enough. Yeah. What else?
I should have known better.
I should have known better. Same? Yeah. Yeah. Should have known better. I'm not good enough. It's just it's as if it was a truth. Like as if we could be the ones decide we're not good enough. And if we look at shame, so for example in Japan, we very often Japan is talked about as a culture of shame. But actually I see what they do as an avoidance pattern of shame. So I was in Japan, I did a training, and in the evening I lived with a family, and in the evening the son of the family had done something at school, and now he was supposed to come to the family of the other kid that he had hurt, and together with one of the parents. And the thing was that he was supposed to then, I'm simplifying a bit, but most of all it was to say, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, 3 times, like saying how bad he was 3 times, and then everything would be over. So for me, that is not shame, that is avoiding shame. Shame would be to come and say, I did this thing and I'm not really proud of it, and like, what do you need from me? That would be, for me, being with the shame, being willing to be with, maybe risking to have more shame, but being willing to do that because I'm willing to take responsibility. So shame, with attacking myself, I wouldn't say that is shame. It's trying to hide away from it also. So what do you do when you withdraw from shame? When you withdraw from moments that give you shame? How might that look?
For me, it's hard to imagine withdrawing from shame and not attacking myself at the same time.
Uh-huh. So I'm just repeating the comment, that it's hard to imagine that you would withdraw without also blaming yourself. Yeah. And I would say that they're usually, if you look at it more closely, you would see that they come one after the other. But very often you would go from one pole to another pole in this compass. So, but withdrawal for me would be, like I said, not singing ever again. I might not have clear judgment about my singing, actually. I will just know I will never want to go close to singing again. And this is, so it's like I'm withdrawing physically, but also emotionally, mentally. I saw that in the town closest to mine, there was a shop that I went into, and I don't know if the person that worked there, if she had a bad day or I don't know, but she was really not helpful. She was saying things that made me feel shame in me asking for support, asking for help in what I wanted to buy. And next time I needed something from that kind of shop, what do you think I did?
Drove 100 kilometers and went to another.
Drove 100 kilometers and visit another one?
Send someone else.
Send someone else?
With online shopping.
Yeah, I might even say I don't like shopping. I'm not going to do it. Not even consciously choosing, but kind of losing the power totally in the situation. Or I might do my favorite. I would go online. I would buy it on the internet because then I don't have to face that. But to me, it's an important thing. If for anyone that has a shop or anyone that has a service where they want people to come, the worst thing you could probably do is to have your customers feel shame, because they would probably not come back. Even if they had done something that they should be ashamed of, or that they have done something that is not such a nice thing, they would probably not come back because of the emotion that they want to withdraw from it. Anything else you do when you withdraw?
I don't give myself any permission to try in the first place.
Yeah. Ooh. Yeah, that makes me really sad. That I don't give myself permission to even try. And I'm sure that so many of you sitting here, I'm sure there are lots of dreams, lots of hope, lots of things that we want to do, but we don't even dare to dream it. We don't even dare to come close because we want to avoid the shame. And to me, that is why I said I feel sad, because I'm sure that there's so many talents, so many gifts that are never given, because we're trying to avoid the shame. Anything else you do when you withdraw and avoid shame that way?
Sometimes it is just like diminishing things that are interesting.
Say louder, I'm not hearing.
Sorry. Sometimes I even diminish things, interesting things for me, if I know that I'm ashamed because I can't do that.
Yeah.
So I try to diminish them.
Yeah. So that you try to diminish the things that are interesting, kind of making them not so interesting, because otherwise you might feel tempted to go and do it, and then you might have the shame.
And it might be the same with people.
It might be the same with people, yes. It might be that, I so much want to hang out with this person, but no, she's not so interesting. It's not so, or I'm not so interesting. So we kind of keep the distance. One of the things that I notice, I do a lot of mediation we have in Sweden an indigenous group of the Sami, the reindeer herders. Probably you have seen images and so on. I do mediation between them and forest companies. And the forest companies of Sweden are the biggest, some of the biggest companies in Sweden. So they are the big bucks, the money. And the Sami, there are very few people left living of the reindeer. So I do a lot of mediation. And I see that in mediation, when there's a conflict, a person can show up physically. They can come and they can sit in this mediation, but they're not there. When you ask them what they want, what they hope for, what they believe in, they kind of say, nothing. So you can withdraw by withdrawing one part of yourself. And this is very often also when I mediate in couples. One of the peoples would say, but you're not here. What do you think? What do you want? What do you feel? And very often, the more the person is kind of trying to get into what this person is feeling, the more they withdraw. Because they know that when they step out of that withdrawal, there will be shame. In that moment, there will be shame again that they maybe had because of what they had done. So very often when someone is withdrawing, they need kind of to be reminded that we want them. Be reminded that we want to have connection with them. Remind them that they're important to us. Because the sad thing with withdrawing is that we believe that someone else has pushed us out, even if we took the first step ourselves. Very, very often when the moments when I feel like I want to withdraw because I'm scared of the shame, I immediately have a sense that, oh, they don't want me anyway. It's almost like I'm thrown out of the group, but it was actually just me doing it. Do you recognize this? Do you see that we sometimes do this? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then we have the invading the vulnerability, and then I like us to back off with maybe one more to the one more. Here. So it might be a good reminder to talk about shame in this way. Shame very often has, as I said, bad reputation, bad press, because we see that it's diminishing people, it's making people withdraw from things they like, they become angry. And I would say that there's one part of shame that is based on culture, on culture. And culture, I mean society, family, and so on. And at the same time, I would say that we're all born with that seed of with a natural shame, and that I call vulnerability. So, as a small child, we have everything in us that makes us kind of aware of, how do you say, growing into becoming aware of how the surrounding is treating us. So we kind of, we know that we need others, we don't know it cognitively, but we grow into picking up signals, picking up how we can influence the people around us. So that's what I call natural vulnerability, a sense of those, like maybe you've seen a child that is smiled at will start smiling. And the more you smile at a child, the more they will smile back at you. So we might think, oh, this child is really happy because it's smiling all the time. But actually, what is probably going on is that they see that if they smile, you will take better care of them. So we are vulnerable, so that we need others. We need them also when we get adults, but as children, we certainly need others. And that vulnerability is, for me, what then later on becomes what is cultural shame. So let's get back to the compass. Yeah. So in the north of this compass, we invade shame, or we invade vulnerability. Any sign of vulnerability, we're probably going to do the direct opposite of what people are saying. You don't dare to do this. So, for example, when I was around 20, I wanted to hitchhike through the Sahara. I decided I wanted to cross the Sahara, and not with a car, not with a bike, but just hitchhike. Crazy idea. This was like decades ago, so no internet, no mobile phones. But I just had this idea. I wanted to hitchhike through Sahara. And of course, I said, nah, maybe not. But then I realized after, some people, some of my friends said, no, it's too scary. It's too dangerous. You cannot do it. You're not strong enough. Why would you do that? And the more the people around me said that it's dangerous, the more the people around me said that you cannot do this, the more I wanted to go. So that is, for me, invading vulnerability. It's like I'm taking risks I'm taking risks in a way that will endanger me, because I don't want to be seen as weak. I don't want to be seen as vulnerable. I don't want to be seen as someone who cannot live up to the expectations. Do you follow? So did anyone notice that they do this when you talk with the people? Yeah. And what do you do?
Well, it's me who is going to the Sahara.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. These kind of things.
Yes.
That doing
For
things.
example, that I have project in my mind, and I'm talking with my mom, and oh no, you will not do that. Oh no, who will pay for that? No one will buy it. No, just leave it. Just
Yeah.
leave it. And more voices like that, and it's more possible that I will do this.
Yeah.
You will see.
Yeah. So this is the idea behind also
Yeah.
for many people bungee jumping or doing things that is risky, not because I'm interested in this. I want to go through Sahara because I'm curious about it. Well, how will it be? No, I do it to prove I am not weak. So again, it sounds like, or it looks like I'm choosing. It looks like I'm powerfully choosing, but it's actually the shame deciding over me to what I'm going to do or not. Anyone else that saw that you do this, that you invade shame? Maybe someone who doesn't want to invade shame at this moment by telling me.
For example, when I was younger, I would use swear words more often just to seem more adult and just to piss my mother off.
Uh-huh. So to use swear words more often, just to piss my mother off, to just kind of get that sense of power, because this is, I don't know if you remember, but the question for me on this axis is, who has the power to change the situation? And the illusion when I do rebel is that I have all the power to change it. And actually, when I did go through Sahara, when I hitchhiked through Sahara, because I did do that, I learned that I don't have all the power how it will be. I learned that I do have power in my life. I can change things, I can do things, but I learned that it was dangerous. I learned that I was almost killed a few times. I learned that I got into a car crash. I learned all kinds of things that I didn't imagine when I was invading the shame. Okay. Any questions around shame so far? Okay. So then I'd like you again to turn to the person closest to you, and just for a few minutes, tell about the last time you felt shame, and if you remember where you moved in the compass at that time, the last time you felt shame, and what did you do to handle it? Just talk with the person closest to you. Thank you. I'm curious to hear if anyone just by sharing this learned anything about yourself or about shame. Or is that too shameful to share? Yes, please.
But the example that came to my mind had to do with me being ashamed of my weakness, physical weakness, with no witnesses around. So it's like it's hard for me to accept the weakness as a state of vulnerability as I understand it now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So even with no witnesses, even for yourself, the shame might come in. Yeah. Because we have a perceived idea of someone else being witnessing us. Anyone else? Yes.
I think I use alcohol also to numb the shame.
Yeah, there are many people who use alcohol or drugs or other things, and the sad thing is that when we use alcohol, for example, to numb shame, we will also numb joy, clarity, appreciation, curiosity. We cannot choose what feeling to numb when we numb ourselves. If it's with food or work, we cannot choose what will be numbed off. What else did you notice when you told your story, if anything?
But it's really hard to find the courage to go up to someone and admit if you did something wrong, and just like explain yourself, or that you feel shameful, and try to maybe ask for forgiveness if you did something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Even though you play it 1,000 times in your head what will you say, and it's just hard to do it.
It's really like she's sharing that it's really hard to when you've done something that you want to say, I'm sorry for, it's still really hard to take that step. And I'm guessing that many of us are. We are so scared of the moment when we will be flooded with that shame and that discomfort, so we're not willing to take that risk. Even if we, in our heads, will know that this will be good for the relationship. This will be good for us, for the connection. Me saying, I'm not proud of what I just did. How is it for you? Because we want to avoid it to any price. And then we hurt our relationships. We hurt our connections. Anything else that you learned?
To ask somebody for help.
Mm-hmm. My partner, he says that GPS, that is like the man's way to avoid shame. But we don't have to ask for help because we can just put it in the GPS. We don't need to show that we're weak. And you hear that's kind of crazy. Why would that be something that we should be ashamed of, saying, where is this bank? Where is the address to, where do I go if I want to find this place? But it's like showing that we're weak. We will show that we're not valuable, maybe being thrown out of the group, maybe not be accepted. So we're not going to take that little risk of being thrown out. And it even goes so far as when I wrote the book that where I describe this more, that it's called Anger, Guilt, and Shame, Reclaiming Power and Choice. During the same period, my son used to love to watch Mr. Bean. And do you know Mr. Bean? He's like this strange British comedian that does all these really shameful things. And when my son watched it, I was like, I don't want to watch it. It's like so much discomfort. So Mr. Bean goes to this restaurant in Paris, and he gets goose liver. And he tastes the goose liver, and he goes like, oh, I don't like goose liver. So then he kind of watches. And then when nobody sees it, he takes the goose liver and he puts it in the bag of the woman beside him. Because he's also not going to tell the waiter that I didn't like the goose liver. So I sit there and I watch Mr. Bean and I go like, ugh, I really feel discomfort. And as I was writing this book, I kind of said, why do I feel shame when he is doing this? It's like weird, eh? Why would I feel shame for Mr. Bean? And I hear that you're laughing because you've also done it, probably. Not only with Mr. Bean, but with most stand-up comedians. Stand-up comedians, they play with this. They go to the edge of what is shameful, and then there's a punchline, and then there's like the relief of laughing. But why does this work?
Because we can relate to it.
We can relate to it. Why more?
We can learn to laugh about ourselves, so it makes it easier for us.
Well,
to
that is the beautiful outcome, that we can. Humor is really a way to kind of diffuse shame. It's a way to kind of poof, let it go. And let me come back to that too. But for me, I realized that I feel the shame for Mr. Bean that he doesn't know he should feel. He doesn't know he should feel ashamed of himself, and then he keeps on doing these stupid things. So he's risking his place in the group. He's risking dying. And it seems like shame is contagious. So when someone is feeling shame around us, we are likely to go, oh, you don't have to feel that. Because we don't want to feel it. So for example, even if I live very far away from most people and live out in the forest, I go to the gas station closest to mine. And the manager in this gas station, I don't know what he's about, but he has this little thing he does. Whenever he serves someone, he goes like this. And you see, some of you already got it by hearing him. He doesn't know this, I'm pretty sure. Sometimes I dream of having, recording him, filming him. But he goes like, and he does it like when I'm in there, maybe 3 minutes, he probably does it 10 times. And I get, already just now, feeling it, it's like, it's so embarrassing for me to hear it. So it's contagious. I feel shame for him and with him. And I actually started to love that. Because to me, that is the seed of compassion. It's the seed of us wanting to take care of others. It's like the seed of where I know where you're at. You're also a human being, and I am a human being. So it's a beautiful thing, and it's also a tricky thing. If you're a mediator, if you're a teacher, if you're someone that works with people and they feel shame, it is likely to be awkward or kind of hard to deal with. So where else is shame? Well, shame seems to be when there's joy, like when there's close connections, when there's openness, and it especially comes in when we feel pride of something, when we feel like we're proud of our kids or people around us or ourselves. It's like, wow, look at me, I managed. It's like, and then someone says something or looks at me with an eye, I go like, and the more proud I was, the more shame I will feel. So not so long ago, I read about a Portuguese soccer team. And this soccer team had been, high on the lists. But then it lost 10 games at a row. So they had a big supporter team. And that came to the games, and of course they were wearing their T-shirts and so on. I'm sure you have those here in Poland as well. The people who have their football team, like my football team is playing tonight, and I'm going to dress like them. I'm going to be associated with the winners, with the best ones. That's the way I am also dignified. That's where I am accepted, and where I have my tribe, my belonging. So those T-shirts that I've just read that, those T-shirts that those soccer teams sell, they're like super income. There's there's so much money in this that you get your tribe and you want to buy your way to the tribe. But anyway, this Portuguese soccer fan club, they got really tired of being on the loser end because it made them feel shame. So what did they do? Well, they went into, after the 10th game or something that they lost, they went into the dressing room of their soccer team and they beat the players up. From their own team. Because to show them, you're not going to humiliate me again. You're not going to make me feel ashamed of wearing this T-shirt. So shame can really have that sad flip side where we are ready to go to violence to protect ourselves from not having it. We are ready to kind of go at length to not be part of it, and we use the violence to say, I'm not them. I'm not part, so I'm not going to be a loser. I actually, when I also wrote this book, I realized something really shameful from when I was a teenager. There was a guy, a friend of mine, who he used to be a friend of mine, and he moved away, and then he moved back. And when he moved back, it was clear he didn't have any friends, and he had a hard time making new friends. He was like, he didn't find where to fit in and so on. And then I realized that I was kind of slowly withdrawing from him too. I was slowly withdrawing from the connection with him. And I didn't realize until I was, 20 years after this, that I didn't want to be seen as someone who's part of this loser, who doesn't have friends. And that's another painful thing for me, that we do this in society. We don't want to associate with beggars on the street, or we don't want to associate with people where someone else might not see us as dignified, where someone else will not see us as okay, because we are associated with the losers. That's why I find it so super important that we know how to deal with, not to avoid the shame, but to actually be willing to step into it and find the compassion that is what I claim to be at the core of shame. It's the ability to empathize. It's the ability to see the other, because that's where we are the same. Before I say more, I want to hear if there are any questions that you haven't got answered from what I said so far.
Can you maybe elaborate a bit more about this compassion in case of some identity we don't want to be associated with, like the last example?
Yes, I can. So, I live, like I said, up in the north of Sweden at the Arctic Circle. And I was down in Stockholm, and I was going with the train home that night. So I was kind of stressed. And I went with a friend into a restaurant to order food. It was an Italian place. And as we sat down, I was like looking at the clock and being stressed. So I kind of waved at the waiter, like, can we have the menu, like really making myself visible. And then the waiter comes like, I am coming. So I took the menu, and I was sitting facing my friend, and and my friend whispered, are you feeling shame? Because we had been exploring this together. We were like looking for the moments. And I hadn't realized I felt shame, because I was like lost in this shame grin, as I call it, this phase where many of us hold shame back. You're like, that little thing when the pressure gets too high. So I realized that, yes, I do feel shame. And then as I learned to connect, when I do feel shame, I connect it to acceptance, belonging, or dignity. What do you imagine that I was, if you could guess one of those three, what would you guess? Dignity, thank you. I'm glad you see it. It took me a long time to see this, many years. So I'm glad you see this after an hour of me babbling, or maybe you saw it, you knew it already. So it was really clear. I had a need for dignity. And as soon as I acknowledged that I had a need for dignity, and I looked up and I saw the waiter coming to take the order, I immediately, not with thinking, not with trying to understand him or trying to be smart about what was going on, immediately, as we say, my heart went out, and I knew that he had the same need. It was clear. It was nothing, It was very, very clear from my heart to this person's heart that I could accept that he has a need for dignity, that I was not meeting with saying, hello, come. You're like, I need you being loud at this restaurant where he wanted, be treated with dignity. So that was maybe the first moment where I could study it clearly, that when I connected to my need of being human, having dignity, I could immediately have compassion for his. And for me, that is one of the reasons why I do this work with shame, that I see we don't even have to understand the other person, but we have to connect with ourselves and that place where compassion can grow. And it doesn't mean that we don't also want to understand or like study it and figure out things because it's fun. But to have compassion, I believe we have to recognize the human part of us so that we can see the other. How is that answer for you? Is it confusing or is it clear what I mean? Yeah? Thank you. Anything else? I'd love to answer questions rather than to talk, and I don't know if you want.
So would you in this situation apologize to the waiter? Like, sorry that I was, kind of falling out of my chair, but I have a train in, 1.5 hours, and this is why I was behaving this way.
She's asking if I said to the waiter to us to say I'm sorry, but I asked or I waved because I'm going with the train. Well, I noticed that I'm kind of wanting to make something up, but I actually don't remember what I did. What I do remember is that it was warm between us. What I do remember is that when I could look at him and remember his humanity, it was easy to connect. Maybe I said something. What I know is that with this woman in Budapest that was opening the door for me, and that was kind of saying, well, come in after you let me out. I knew that with her, I didn't say anything. I didn't excuse myself. I was just listening to her, and I said, thank you for good advice. And I didn't do that to skip my own, that I'm important, but actually I don't see that we need to do it when there is that sense of connection. But we can, of course. Anything else?
Well, I observed that it's difficult for me to be in this place of shame. And I have this blackout, and I don't remember things.
Yes.
And I would like to know how to practice being in that place, how to start making those small steps into being more comfortable when I feel ashamed.
Mm-hmm. I really appreciate your description of the shame. So she was saying something like, so when shame comes and it's so strong, we kind of blank out, we forget things, we're not creative, no words, we're like that. What to do, how to practice that, as I understand your question, like how to be more graceful in that moment.
Yeah.
Yes. So, first of all, I love the description of it because shame makes us stupid. And to me, that's a good thing to remember. When I feel kind of stupid, when I don't find my words, it's kind of a comfort to me to realize that I'm not supposed to be smart in this moment. I'm supposed to, from my system, I'm supposed to be able to run or fight. It's the fight and flee response. It's like, so of course I am not going to get it. I'm not going to be smart. That sometimes, for me, kind of helps me relax and say, okay, I'm not so smart. I don't know what to say because I have a shame reaction. Secondly, when I realize that, when I can say that, yes, I'm overwhelmed with shame, again, I would make it a habit, I would make it a practice to remind myself of that I'm a human being, so I have those needs for acceptance, dignity, and belonging. And I ask myself, so what is it in this moment? Is it that I need acceptance? And usually when I can find, that is the strange things with when I connect to needs, then I can see, and I need acceptance, but I also need support. Or I need dignity, but I also need warmth. So it kind of opens up for more creativity if I remember in that moment that I'm not here to be superhuman. I'm not here to be, I'm here to kind of be human, and then I can ask for stuff. So actually, it might sound simple, and don't believe me, but when you go out of here tonight and you have a shame moment, check it out. Because I know that shame for some of us, we might have shame that is 10 years old, 20 years old, 30 years old. We might have memories from childhood that we still feel shame around. So it seems like it's hard work. We need to kind of go through thousands of hours of therapy, or we need to fix ourselves. And I am amazed by how simple it can be. How we actually can, as soon as we kind of hook ourselves up with just being human, that then we usually find the way out. It doesn't, we still might feel, the blushing and the shaking and the not being sure of the words, but usually when we come over that bump, we are much more connected if we are ready to stay in the fire of the shame. How does that answer sound to you?
Thank you.
Yeah, and I hope you try it and to see if it works. So don't believe me before you try it. Anything else?
So it's enough to say yourself, I'm only human and I have rights to make mistakes? Some mistakes? Yes.
Of course, some people will not say it's enough. But I would say it's usually enough to come to a place where I have compassion and where I have more clarity on what to do. Like you were saying, you become, like you forget words, you forget things, you kind of block yourself off. So very, very much so I would say that if we connect to remembering we're human, it's enough for us to take the next step. And usually it doesn't then leave that biological trace in us that we will, have a memory of that shame, but we actually transform it. And don't believe me before you try it. I'm not here to tell the truth. I'm here to kind of make you a bit more curious about it. Anything else?
I get the impression that, because you're saying that shame is actually good, right? Or, so, I don't think that it is good all the time, because, for example, your example with the waiter, I think it's his job to serve you.
Mm-hmm.
So, in my opinion, you shouldn't feel ashamed of the fact that you're just being a customer and you want to be well served.
Mm-hmm. So the comment is something like, I make it shorter, it's something like, why do you feel shame, or you shouldn't feel shame at certain moments? Like with the waiter, why should you feel ashamed? It's his job to serve you. And you're kind of asking if I see shame as always something good. Is that, did I get you there? Yeah. Well, cultural shame, meaning when we have shame that is stopping us from doing things, then I would say, yes, it's easy to see that it's in the way. It's easy to see that it's not a good thing. It's easy to see that shame kind of cuts us off from life. What I'm talking about is the possibility to actually, through embracing that cultural shame, that we will come to that natural shame, or to that place of vulnerability. So yes, I would see that the waiter's job is to serve me, for sure, but I still want to treat him with dignity. If I want to see a world where there is care, if I want to see a world where there is compassion, where there's human dignity, I want to take that moment to live that. Not because I should, not because I have to, not as in the same way as I don't see that he should be okay with me being loud in his restaurant. But I would see it as an opportunity to live what I love to see in the world: more compassion, more warmth, more mutual dignity. What I would have done before I would embrace shame, I would probably either go to the compass and say, blame him. I was like, don't be such a, either with my friend or directly at his face. Sad enough. I would, tell him that he shouldn't be so grumpy. He should be more service-minded. He should be nicer to me. He should, blah, blah, blah. And maybe I've been thrown out of the restaurant and I wouldn't get food at all for my long train ride. That's what I would do to avoid shame before. Or I might go, well, if you don't want to serve me, I go to another restaurant and maybe all other are closed. So I won't have food. So to me, I love the question because I'm not saying you should feel shame. I'm not saying you should have more shame than what you have. I'm not saying that you should blame or shame others. I am suggesting that when you have shame, when you notice you have it, it's a door to connection, it's a door to compassion. But only if the person is choosing it. Only if you do it by choice. If I try to force someone else to embrace their shame, to have compassion with me, it won't work. Because it is connected to that freedom of choice. So if I want to be grumpy at the waiter back, feel free to be grumpy at the waiter. It's not about being perfect, about always having compassion. It's about choosing those moments that you want to transform it. Yeah. Because probably, if I always try to be compassionate, it's probably to avoid shame. If I'm always trying to be perfect, it's probably because I want to avoid shame. I don't want to take any risks of saying something that is not good, that is not aligned with what I'm supposed to do, because I want to avoid shame. So we're not here to be perfect. We're here to enjoy life, I would say.
So, like, for instance, when you have a situation in which, because I also agree with this last comment, and I think it's something cultural, but, for instance, sometimes you can decide, right, okay, I prefer to feel shame, but because I really need this service or because I really need this for me, because afterwards I'm going to blame myself why I didn't stand up, why I didn't do this, just because of shame.
Yes, and to me, standing up for my needs will not necessarily have to do with me avoiding shame. It could be, me talking to the waiter. If I had more time, I could say, there's something in the things you told me, the way you said it, that made me kind of feel uncomfortable. Do you want to hear about it? Because maybe that could be of service to you tomorrow when you have customers. So I'm not going to let him treat me in any way he likes, because that would also be avoiding shame. Anything before we end for tonight? Anything more that you want to ask or say? Okay.
Do you think that maybe, just coming back to this later situation and apologizing for, being, behaving in an inappropriate way, explaining yourself, is again a way of avoiding shame? Because I'm talking about myself, I would for sure apologize because I would just generally recognize that if I was in his place, I would feel bad that, this lady is like maybe disrespecting me. But sometimes people would just tell you like, okay, don't explain yourself. Like, don't try to explain your actions.
Yeah.
Like,
So
don't try to find excuses.
Yeah, so to me it's important. It's about excusing, saying I'm sorry. To me there are two ways of saying I'm sorry. One is, I'm sorry, I was bad, I'm wrong, hit me, because that's how bad I am. Or it's the way of saying sorry, I really regret what I did before. Because I guess it was hard for you to meet your need for dignity. And is there anything you would need from me to kind of feel okay with this? That is for me a different way of saying I'm sorry. Where I don't need to make myself bad to say, excuse me. So it's more a matter of that, I would say. So I'd love to end with just making a wish that I hope that after this day and this last bit, that you're looking forward to the next time you feel shame, so that you can try out if it has to do with acceptance, belonging, or dignity.